Thanks for joining Just Us Chatting. I'm Tamara.
And I'm Michael. And today we wanted to discuss a little bit of what we found. Something Jordan Peterson shared on Facebook about the fact that Peter Boghossian is facing discipline for the part he played in his collaboration with James Lindsay and Helen Pluckrose in kind of exposing the lack of rigor, I guess, the lack of rigor in some of the sociology fields, gender studies, what they've termed as grievance studies. So they put together, for people who don't know the story, a group of 3 professors, Peter Boghossian, Helen Pluckrose, and James Lindsay, put together a series of papers that were completely nonsense. Just they extracted sections of Mein Kampf and replaced Jew with white male and stuff like this. Maybe not quite that blatant, but pretty bad. And then they submitted them to be published, and they actually got published by a series of gender studies and race studies and ethnic studies and grievance studies papers, peer reviewed, and it turns out that at every turn when they were even awarded for exceptional scholarship on some of them. And they even they said that when we saw James Lindsay and Peter Boghossian on Joe Rogan, they were talking about how even when peer review, generally it's like, okay, well, you put together this paper and then you send it in for peer review, and then they say, well, you might want to look at this, and this thing needs to change, whatever. And it generally is supposed to help rein you in and make you less,
biased or
less speculative,
okay.
I guess.
Yeah.
And they said that every single time they got something back, it was basically them saying, well, you need to make this even more crazy. You need to take into consideration, additional things and more stuff, and so add a bunch more, buzzwords and nonsense. And so maybe we should turn this fan off. You think?
Sure.
Let's turn the fan off. I don't know if that's. It looks like it might be coming up on the audio, so just let it calm down for a little bit, and we'll see how that goes. But apparently, so good for them.
Yeah.
For one,
for exposing this.
For exposing that, exactly.
Yeah.
I think it's a important thing. It was one of the kind of precursors to this was this paper that was published years back called the Conceptual Penis, which basically it was just this rambling joke about how everything in the world is phallic, and penises are conceptual, and there's not it's just penises are socially constructed. It's like, okay. It's silly.
Wow.
It's really silly, and it got published, and this was like one of the precursors to this more recent. I hate to call it a hoax. It's actually I would say it's a piece of activism.
Mm-hmm.
It's academic activism. It's like, look, you guys you're not credible.
Yeah.
The fact that somebody can just fake something that you're just kind of,
yeah,
we'll just reference other people's work and whatever, and it's going to get published in your journals.
Yeah.
Like there's no.
The crazier it is, the more likely, the more intersectional it is, the more anti-male, the more.
Right. As long as you adhere to like a certain ideological line of reasoning, and that's what they decided, right? So apparently Peter Boghossian is facing discipline for this from his. This is in the Washington Times. I'll go ahead and share this with you. We've got Portland State University professor to face discipline for exposing shoddy scholarship. A scholar whose carefully crafted fiction, which is a good way to call it, helped expose the rot within some sectors of the modern academy, is now under fire from his home, Portland State University, although prominent academics throughout the West have risen to his defense. Well, that's
good.
That's good to know.
Yeah.
But the idea that his university is even,
yeah,
I mean,
planning to discipline him.
Disciplining him over this is ridiculous. It's like they should be thanking him.
No kidding.
Peter Boghossian, an assistant professor of philosophy at Portland State University in Oregon, led a trio of scholars last year who submitted to leading publications what they called intentionally broken papers on gender, race, and sexuality. Several of the absurd pieces were published and awarded, for exceptional scholarship. Maybe they'll go on and talk about it, but I'm just going to go ahead and break in right here. Mm-hmm. They had a video. Sorry, they had a video. They had one of the papers that got published and actually was granted an award initially. Was about how dogs humping other dogs and legs in dog parks reproduce patriarchy.
I remember them talking about that.
It was something like along the lines of, or cis heteronormativity or something.
Or it was like I thought it was like rape culture at dog
That's right.
parks.
That's right. It was rape culture. It was that that dog humping incidents at in dog parks
mm-hmm.
were reinforcing rape culture.
Yeah, something.
So this actually got an award, and that's sad. So now Portland State has initiated disciplinary actions against Mr. Boghossian for what it calls a breach of the institution's ethical guidelines. I would say the fact that those papers were published represents a breach of ethical guidelines. Like the fact that something like that can be published without
that any
among the renowned international scholars urging Portland State to forego such action is University of Oxford professor emeritus Richard Dawkins, who compared PSU administrators to the duplicitous pigs in George Orwell's Animal Farm. Well, good for you, Richard Dawkins.
Nice.
I'm not a huge fan of Dawkins. Scientific materialists aren't my favorite people in the world, but congratulations on that one.
Yeah.
I'll agree. My first response here we go. It looks like this is a quote from him. My first response on reading the punitive investigation into Dr. Peter Boghossian's brilliant hoax was to let out a howl of incredulous mirth. Mr. Dawkins wrote on December 14th, "Do your humorless colleagues who brought this action want Portland State to become the laughingstock of the academic world, or at least the world of serious scientific..." What do we got here?
Sorry.
Come on. Serious scientific scholarship uncontaminated by pretentious charlatans of exactly the kind Dr. Boghossian and his colleagues were satirizing? It was unclear Monday if Mr. Boghossian, I'm going to say Professor Boghossian, had been reprimanded or punished. The university declined interview requests, and Mr. Boghossian did not reply to requests for comment. So they were unable to confirm this, it looks like. The university, however, released a statement that appeared to indicate the matter had been resolved and noted that Mr. Boghossian remained on the faculty. The Institutional Review Board completed its review of Dr. Boghossian's research and has communicated its deliberations and findings to him, said Mark McClellan, Vice President of Research and Graduate Studies for Portland State. Mr. McClellan appeared to be referring to a November 27 report that the board sent to Professor Boghossian that had not been made public. The board reportedly examined only the dog park paper, which purported to examine rape culture through the study of dogs in a Portland park. It was published in Gender, Place, and Culture and won an accolade for excellent scholarship. I knew that. They had to have brought it up, right? So, yeah, excellent scholarship there. Portland State's Review Board comprises 15 members of the faculty and community. Mr. McClellan said it was unclear whether Mr. Boghossian had been permitted to present his side at hearings. Boghossian was joined by James Lindsay, a mathematics doctoral candidate, and Helen Pluckrose, an English literature professor, in the celebrated Ruse. All three described themselves as left-wing supporters of gender, race, and sexuality studies who were concerned that what they dubbed grievance studies had become corrupted by bogus scholarship. In a video accompanying the announcement of their hoax in October, Mr. Lindsay insisted it was designed not to denigrate specific disciplines, but to expose the political corruption that's taken hold of the university. Jordan Peterson, a psychology professor at the University of Toronto, who has become an author and speaker worldwide, joined Mr. Dawkins and others condemning Portland State's proposed disciplinary actions. From my perspective, any academic misconduct that is occurring is being perpetuated by those who are raising and pursuing the allegations, and most certainly not on the part of Dr. Boghossian. Mr. Peterson wrote in a blistering two-page letter to Portland State on December 22nd. Dr. Boghossian and his colleagues, like Alan Sokol before them, did the academic world and the broader community that surrounds it a great favor by pointing out the embarrassing nakedness of the emperor, Mr. Peterson wrote. The fact that he is now being pursued by your institution for academic misconduct is nothing but further proof of the absolute corruption characterizing the very disciplines he so rightly satirized, pilloried, and exposed. So, Sokol is the one who did the Conceptual Penis, I believe. Yeah. We'll go ahead and read this.
Okay.
In 1996, Mr. Sokol, a mathematics and physics professor who split his time between London and New York University, performed a similar feat to that of Mr. Boghossian and his team. He wrote a nonsensical piece designed to flatter the editor's ideological preconceptions and got it published in Social Text, a left-wing intellectual publication of Duke University. Mr. Sokol is among the scholars backing Mr. Boghossian and his team. In a December 14th letter to Portland State, Mr. McClellan, Mr. Sokol addressed what he called serious inadequacies in the November 27 report, a copy of which he had been provided. His review of the report concluded that Mr. Boghossian should face no disciplinary action whatsoever for his project. The Institutional Review Board said the authors have admitted to purposely fabricating research data in this, as well as other academic papers, according to a quote in Mr. Sokol's letter. Well, no, Mr. Sokol wrote, the authors have admitted no such thing. Mr. Sokol said PSU administrators improperly conflated two definitions of fabricate, and given that the researchers always intended to publicize the truth of their papers rather than pawn them off as legitimate, they cannot be accused of any academic impropriety. What they did was to write entire articles whose main thesis they do not believe, and which indeed they consider to be absurd, as part of an experiment aimed at testing the intellectual standards of certain sectors of the contemporary academy. Neither Mr. Boghossian nor his team kept their project's goal completely hidden from the broader intellectual world, it now appears. In a December 12th letter to Portland State administrators Michael Sherman, a fellow at Chapman University and publisher of Skeptic magazine, told the school that the trio had informed him of what they were doing from the very beginning and fully endorsed its ethical necessity. In my opinion, the same respect and appreciation should be afforded Dr. Boghossian and his colleagues, but at the very least, he should not be punished for it, Mr. Sherman wrote. So,
right.
I'm going to go ahead and say I agree with all of that. I don't think he should be punished for exposing the weakness in
the academy.
In academic, the lack of academic rigor in certain studies.
Yeah.
In certain fields.
Yeah.
Peterson's was getting nailed on Twitter recently by I can't remember the guy's name, but he got in a big Twitter war over the validity of IQ.
Oh.
And so
really?
that's part of the thing.
Yeah.
People are supposed to, these ideas have to be attacked.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so if you can't, yeah, these ideas have to be attacked. I mean, ideas have to be attacked, and and otherwise we end up following bad ideas.
Right.
If you say, oh yeah, that's a great idea because because I'm not a racist, I don't want to be called a racist. So that's an amazing idea.
Right.
Like you just kind of like hide from the conflict of it. Then we all end up going over a cliff because we're following bad ideas that no one's willing to challenge. Right. So this is definitely important.
I know.
This kind of stuff.
Yeah. It seems like a failing of the university, that that so-called studies are being published that really have no validity whatsoever.
Well, that's the sad part, right? Is that there might be some studies that have validity. Mm-hmm. There might be some studies in there that have some sort of academic worth,
right? But they're publishing.
There might be lots, but the fact that something like that can get through, destroys the credibility of the entire. You know what I mean? So they have to do a better job of, of
vetting the
and they have to be more methodologically precise too, because like. I don't know if you remember the term or heard the term autoethnography.
Heard it, yeah.
So autoethnography, right, is this idea that like an individual's personal experience is valid academics, right? It's like it's like, okay, well, anecdotes are now valid academically somehow.
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
Right? Like anecdotes and speculation are academically acceptable as what I mean, like, and it's not like I'm a scholar,
Yeah.
But I feel like I need to be able to rely on scholars, doing real work.
Right.
Real things, so that I can skim an article and go, oh, look, facts, and then, be
not
satisfied.
Just opinion.
Right?
Yeah.
I should be able to skim an article, look at some statistics and go, oh, yeah, okay, that's good. Look, oh, this study came from Harvard, great.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, that's good. That should be good enough.
Right.
But it's not anymore because of things like this.
Right.
So it's like, okay, we've got the wage gap.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So we get like this, okay, well, we've got the wage gap. It's like, well, hold on. When they say, when even Barack Obama was saying things like, women make 78 cents to a man's dollar.
Something like that.
Right, 77 cents, 79 cents, something in the upper 70s, whatever.
Yeah.
Right? Implying that that's the case for people who are working side by side doing the same job.
Mm-hmm.
Right? It's like, first of all, there's no women out there doing crab fishing, in the, above the Arctic Circle, sailing out of Anchorage.
There might be one.
There might be one, right? There's almost zero.
Yeah, yeah.
There's pretty close to zero of them doing that, right?
Yeah.
So when the woman standing next to the dude who's hauling, 600-pound metal crates out of the freezing Atlantic, freezing Pacific Ocean, in the middle of the night, while the boat's rocking all over the place and getting, swamped with, waves.
Mm-hmm.
When the woman is out there doing that, she's not getting paid the same as the guy standing next to her.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right. But that's not what's happening.
Yeah.
Right. What's happening is that guy's risking his life and getting a lot of money, and and women are working desk jobs and they're teachers and nurses and stuff, and they're not risking their lives.
Yeah.
Now that's one aspect. Like men work outside, they work dangerous jobs, etc. So, but there's this multivariate, situation with the pay with
right. It's taking all jobs into account, right? And averaging out what people are making.
Right. And then you see, but then this stuff gets politicized. Mm-hmm. Right? It's like if you had a good multivariate analysis and you could go, oh, well, look, this, in this way, women are not doing so well. Be like, oh, that's
something to look at.
That's something to look at, right? But when you just kind of go, well, there's not enough female CEOs. Mm-hmm. It's like, well,
why? Why does it matter? Why did?
Oh my goodness! There we go.
That shouldn't be ringing.
Are we upside down? There we go. Sorry, I'm using my camera, or my phone as a camera, so.
Shit, what was I gonna say?
We should be able to rely on our studies.
Yeah.
Right? We should be able to, like, look at studies and look at, oh, this came out of Harvard, or this came out of, whatever university, and be like, that's probably a pretty good study.
Right.
The people who are, doing this are, the people who are doing these studies are interested in the pursuit of truth.
Right. And they're doing their due diligence to find that truth.
Right. Right? But that's not what's happening.
No.
The people who are doing this are pursuing justice.
Right.
Like they're pursuing justice.
Yeah.
And justice is like their political framework.
Mm-hmm. And even if it means they have to like look for a certain end game or like an end point with their article, their study, like even if they're like, because I mean when you're doing a study, shouldn't you be doing it with an open mind, kind of like, okay, whatever results come up, like I'm, you know what I mean, I just want to find the truth.
Right.
But the thing is, if you have a certain like political ideology that's like very strong, and you're really
starting from the basis that women are oppressed,
right,
and they've got
then you're gonna find that evidence because you're looking for it specifically,
right. And so it's like, okay, well, I'm looking for it's like instead of trying, they're not asking the question, are women actually oppressed? Mm-hmm. Right? They're asking the question, how are women oppressed by this thing, or how are women oppressed by this particular thing? It's like, well, okay.
Yeah.
If you're asking how women are oppressed by a specific thing, you're going to find some reason that women are oppressed by these things, right? Like, that's what...
Whatever you look for, you can find.
Because everybody is being oppressed.
Right.
Right? Everyone's like a victim of culture and nature. Mm-hmm. Everyone's a victim of their circumstance to some degree.
Right.
So, and in all of the ways that you could possibly be imposed upon, right? It's like there's no...
But to some degree, we have to take personal responsibility. Right. It's like we as women tend to take jobs based on what we want to do in life, what we'd rather do in life. You know what I mean? So women tend to take jobs that end up paying less because we can. I mean, for the most part.
Well, how is that the case?
I mean... Because women, here's the thing, because men don't necessarily look for a woman that is making a lot of money. A guy does not necessarily care. A guy will marry or date a girl or a woman that is making less than him. Mm-hmm. In fact, it's probably better, you know what I mean? Because a lot of times guys don't want to be with a woman that's making a lot more.
Yeah, because they're sexist pigs and they want to control them with their money.
No, but so women are not desirable based on their earning power. So they don't have to make as much to be desirable for a mate. Mm-hmm. Whereas men, women want to go either on par with what they're making or up. They want to, I forget how you word it, but like, men are more desirable based on their earning power. Yeah. And so men tend to take jobs that are more dangerous or, have to work longer hours or just more stressful in general. And I'm not saying women don't work stressful jobs and that they don't work dangerous jobs, but they tend to work less dangerous jobs. Now, there's a lot of women work stressful jobs. Sure. But men do tend to go for a job based on its earning potential rather than what he's wanting to do with his life. Yeah. It's just on the whole. I'm not saying in every case, obviously. Yeah. Some women do take a job based on its earning potential,
I would like to take a quick break here just to point out that while discussing hypergamy, which is that whole across and down versus across and up thing, in the context of discussing hypergamy, anyone who wants to donate or whatever, like to us, because I need to make more money so that I can keep my beautiful wife, because it would be much appreciated.
We don't have a way for people to donate.
It's all right. We'll have to set up some way for people to donate if they want to. But it would be really, I'd really appreciate it so that I don't, my wife doesn't leave me. We good?
We make enough for now.
We make enough.
We get by.
We get by. We're okay.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. So.
Well, I mean, I don't know. That was one of the things that was bothering me today was I thought, like, if Peter Boghossian is facing, some sort of disciplinary action or review board or whatever,
yeah,
that's something that we should talk about. It's important enough.
Yeah.
Another thing is that I've been seeing recently, I know we were going to talk about spiral dynamics today, but
oh yeah,
we're rolling, I think, a little too long to get started on that now.
That's fine.
But I've been seeing, like in the last couple of days, rolling around right-wing online media, this study that says that men have it worse, actually. And I'm not sure that I approve. Not because, not because I don't think that it's possible, or anything like that. Obviously, I've just had a whole conversation about that, but the first couple of times I saw it, it said something along the lines of like that it was focusing on educational opportunities and overall life satisfaction and something else. It's like, well, we already know that men are lagging behind in educational opportunities, so that's basically like slanting the study right there.
Yeah.
Using that as one of the main, characteristics.
And that's sort of a recent thing, would you say, in the last decade or so?
I don't think it's been the last decade. I think it's been the last, 30 years.
Oh.
It's been longer. It's been going on...
Really? That less and less men are going, to college and higher education?
Yep. It's been happening... It's been happening for a while. It's been decreasing for a while, but I think the number of men who graduate and go on to college has been decreasing. They've only... I think recently been surpassed by women in the past decade.
Okay.
And I don't mean, it's when I say that it's been decades. Here, this is the weird thing about numbers, right? Because you can say like, oh, well, like the number of men has been decreasing. Well, first of all, it's not a zero-sum thing, right? It's not like the proportion of men to women has been decreasing for the past 30 years, and they finally surpassed recently. It's that fewer men have been going, and more women.
And more women have been going. Yeah.
Right. So, it's like of the males who graduate.
Yeah.
More of them have decided not to go to college. Recently, right? And that's been that trend has been increasing. So.
I wonder what some of the reasons are.
Well, some of the reasons are that school is okay. So our school system was established to turn people into factory workers, basically, right? That's why
even universities.
No,
or the lower
school
K
systems.
through 12.
Yeah, K through 12. They were designed to turn people into factory workers.
Okay.
So one of the reasons is that the school system was designed to turn people into wage workers.
Yeah.
Then the other reason, though, it's more recent, but the educational system has basically once women kind of took over the teaching professions, it wasn't long after that boys started being treated kind of like dysfunctional girls, right? Like young boys are rambunctious and rowdy, and they want to go outside and play, and they want to they're not happy to sit still, and they want to they don't want to sit in groups, they want to do things, and so that's one, not conducive to the whole line them up in an assembly line and put stuff in their heads thing that was originally supposed to be, right? So we already were kind of along that way, kind of along the line, working towards dampening that down, and then we come into kind of the postmodern feminist culture that is, you know, expanding in the United States, and what we start to see as the green meme arises, we get more and more of this. Well, we're just we're being taught by feminists.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You know, feminism is the mainstream ideology nowadays.
Mm-hmm. I think it was even like when I was growing up. I didn't notice at the time, right. But
it's a culture. Let's put it this way: it's a culture. It's kind of a cultural faux pas to say that you're not a feminist.
Mm-hmm.
Like you kind of go, oh, I'm not. I don't know if I really would call myself that.
Mm-hmm.
Now, when asked in polls and surveys, people are much more like, yeah, okay, sure. But like in conversations,
mm-hmm.
like hanging out with people, whatever, it's like, it's. I guess it depends on where you are, but
yeah, the circle you're with.
Yeah, it depends on the circle you're with, for sure.
But
certainly in urban areas.
So you think basically once guys are getting out of high school, they're like, well, screw going into more of that, of what I just experienced. Or they're like, well, I'm going to go into the military, or I'm going to go to trade school to just learn something so I can, go.
Yep.
And I mean, that's what I did, but.
Well, I mean, there's lots of, people who are deciding that they could go become and not even, I would say maybe not even enough if you listen to people like Mike Rowe
mm-hmm.
from Dirty Jobs, right? But lots of people are deciding, well, I can go be a welder. I don't have to, go be indoctrinated with feminist basket weaving.
The other thing is, I mean, even beyond that, it's like when you go to university, there's a lot of different courses you have to take just to get, the degree for the thing you actually want to
Yeah. There's
so
all
like,
sorts of,
you could go to trade school, pay a lot less,
mm-hmm.
and you're just learning what you need to know,
Mm-hmm.
When I went to massage school, it was like $8,000, $9,000.
Yep.
And, it's only 8 months, so some trade schools are obviously longer, but I mean, it's not as long as a 4-year university.
Right.
You're not paying as much, you're not being indoctrinated, and you can learn the skill you need to know.
Right away.
Yep.
You start working on it immediately.
So I can see why, I could see why less people in general would want to go to university.
Yeah.
It's gotten so expensive.
It definitely has its pros and its cons, but it seems that recently the cons have been, at least for men, the cons
mm-hmm.
have seemed to be outweighed.
Yeah.
The fact that you go to, you show up your freshman year, and one of the first things at every single college, like one of the first things you have to go through is, this social justice orientation,
right?
Where you're told basically that you're a rapist.
That might be a bit hyperbolic.
Maybe a little bit hyperbolic.
But telling you, kind of
hyperbolic.
Teaching you about, how to be careful not to rape or something.
Yeah, be careful not to rape anyone.
And then also, I mean, I don't know all of what they learn, but I have heard similar things,
Yes.
And then, of course, gender studies is specifically about women and how we're oppressed, and men and how they're the oppressors.
Well, and then so gender studies is basically the religion of the gender intersectionality is becoming the religion of college administrators everywhere, right? So, Title IX said that basically offered a way for the federal government to pressure colleges into ensuring sexual parity.
Yeah.
Right? And so if you're getting funding from from the federal government mm-hmm. as a college or as a university, you have to abide by certain rules, and that is Title IX. Title IX was originally intended just to be, make sure that women had equal access to sports and stuff like this.
Money for their sports
teams.
Yeah,
sports teams and stuff, right? But it quickly ballooned into basically equality of outcome everywhere, and then we've got the 1 in 4 and 1 in 5 figures about 1 in 4 and 1 in 5 women have been raped on college campuses. It's like, well, that's not even true in the Congo. Right? And
1 in 4?
Yeah. It's
in
like,
the Congo, it's
not?
It's
about like that in the Congo, right?
I would think it's even worse. I thought it was worse.
It's bad.
But
it's
like,
bad.
and there it's more like violent rape and shit.
Yeah. 25% of women on college campuses are being raped. Is that true?
It's such a tricky situation because it's like, what do you define as rape? Are we combining violent rape with date rape? And I'm not saying that date rape is okay, but it's different. It's differently traumatic. It's way more traumatic if you're like actively pushing and saying no, and the guy hits you and whatever is having his way with you. Like, there's a difference. But I think we're lumping a number of different types of sexual assaults all into the same category.
Yeah.
And
that's okay. So we talked about that a little bit before too. The idea that they're exploding the category everywhere.
Yeah.
Right? They're destroying categories intentionally because they want to make these things like rape. They want to make like Matt Damon came out and said, we've got to, he was trounced for it,
sure. I'm sure.
For saying, look, we've got to recognize that there's gradations of misconduct.
Right.
Right? It's like not everybody who taps someone on the ass is a rapist.
No kidding. And that's the thing. It's like it cheapens, or it kind of
Exactly.
It cheapens, it takes away from the experiences, or it takes away from the depth to which someone experiences pain when they're truly assaulted in a violent manner.
I can't imagine what it would be like for someone who is like violently assaulted.
Yeah.
To be going to a support group
where people are like, oh, this guy was whistling at me, or this guy hit me on the ass, or, this guy asked if he could kiss me, or this guy asked me out on a date. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, I can't. It's like, and then to have like the group moderators or whatever be like, well, we have to, everyone has their own trauma to sort through. It's like yeah, but that like if you've been violently raped,
no kidding.
Like, I can't imagine you looking at those other people and being like,
I would have no compassion. I'm sorry, but if I was that person, I would, and even still, I really have no compassion. Like, I'm not saying it's okay for guys to slap your ass. I've had men do inappropriate things, to be sure. I've been in bad situations, but I have never been violently raped, and I feel for those people, and I do not pretend that my experiences, my negative and somewhat slightly traumatic experiences, were anything near what someone experiences if they're violently raped. Yeah. I'm sorry, but that is just ridiculous,
asinine.
And it gets me emotional because it's like, it just pisses me off. It's like, I'm sorry, but your experience is not the same as that. And we should not be lumping rape, like all these things into the category of rape. Some guy asking you on a date, oh, that's rape culture. No, it's not rape culture. How are you supposed to ever have an intimate relationship if a guy can't even ask you on a date? You know? And then it's like, okay, so there's this weirdness, like you're at a bar, right? And a guy that you don't find attractive, wants to buy you a drink, and you're like, oh, like these women get creeped out by it. But then a guy who's in their mind attractive asks to buy them a drink, and they're like, oh. And somehow it's okay if the guy who they find attractive is asking to buy them a drink, whereas the guy who is maybe less attractive in their mind, or whatever the case is, he's a creep.
Right.
So then it comes down to like whether a guy's attractive or not. And I'm sorry, but that is ridiculous.
It's like it basically, harassment is whether or not you wanted it.
Right.
That's the definition for harassment. Is like, so I have no control over whether or not I harass you.
Right. The guy has no control over whether or not the girl finds him attractive.
And thus I have no control whether or not I'm harassing.
And it's like, men have to try. And to be honest, I don't like this whole thing about, I've been in weird situations where a guy asked to kiss me and I didn't like it, and it was like, oh, I don't know, but as long as he doesn't go further, there's nothing wrong with that. Hey, he tried. You know what I mean? How is a guy else? How else is he supposed to know if you like him, or is whether he's got to ask? But this whole culture of like men can't even ask a woman on a date anymore, or they can't ask for a phone number, or they can't like show any kind of interest in the workplace or anywhere. And I know that's a tricky thing in the workplace, but like, how are people supposed to get together if someone doesn't kind of make a move somehow? And I know we're getting kind of off topic a little. There's so many areas to discuss within this topic.
But it's like, okay, so but it kind of goes back to what we were talking about earlier with the idea that you've got to have, you should be able to trust studies.
Yeah.
But if you see a study that says that 1 in 4 women on college campuses is being raped, you have to go like, your mind recoils at that. You're like, wait, 25% of women on college campuses are being raped?
It's insane.
There's right, and of course if you buy that, then I mean, we're in crisis mode.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But if you look at the studies and you see how it's done, it's like, oh my God.
Like, what all is that including? I don't even know.
Yeah.
Do you know? I mean, sure, if you want.
1 in 4 women. All right. Well, we'll go Huffington Post. Why not?
All right. It's from 2015, but
latest sexual assault statistic. Okay, so sexual assault. Now they're saying sexual assault, right? Okay, so sexual assault, not rape.
Right. I mean, this is a broader category, right? It encompasses.
Here we go. This is that they're hitting us right. They're hitting us right here. 1 in 4, 1 in 5. Come on, it can't be that high. That's just feminist propaganda. Right there. Let me go ahead and switch over to the browser so you guys can see what I'm looking at. This is Huffington Post. 1 in 4 women, how the latest sexual assault statistics were turned into clickbait by the New York Times. As someone who's worked on college campuses to educate men and women about sexual assault and consent, I've seen the barriers to raising awareness and changing attitudes. Chief among them, in my experience, is a sense of skepticism, especially among college-age men, that sexual assault is even all that dire of a problem to begin with. 1 in 4, 1 in 5, can't be that high. That's just feminist propaganda. A lot of the statistics that get thrown around in this area, they seem to think, have more to do with politics and ideology than with careful, dispassionate science. So they often wave away the issue of sexual assault and won't engage on issues like affirmative consent. In my view, these are the men we really need to reach. Reach me. Not that I'm college age, but whatever. A new statistic. So enter the headline from last week's New York Times coverage of the latest college campus sexual assault survey. 1 in 4 women experience sex assault on campus. But that's not what the survey showed. And you don't have to read all 288 pages of the published report to figure this out, although I did that today just to be sure. The executive summary is all you need. Here's what the authors of the survey prepared on behalf of the Association of American Universities had to say in their introductory remarks. Estimates such as 1 in 5 or 1 in 4 as a global rate are oversimplistic, if not misleading. None of the studies which generate estimates for specific IHE's Institute of Higher Education are nationally representative. They go on to highlight that only 19.3% of students who were contacted actually responded to the survey, despite incentives, a low response rate for these kinds of surveys, and that even they were not likely to be representative of the student body within their own schools. Specifically, an analysis of non-response bias found that estimates may be too high because non-victims may have been less likely to participate. None of this is buried in the fine print. In fact, the authors of the report, still in the executive summary, explicitly chastised news organizations for the misleading coverage of previous surveys. Well, good. And so let's go ahead and, focus on figures like 1 in 5 reporting victimization. Researchers who generated this number have repeatedly said the 1 in 5 number is for a few IHEs and not representative of anything outside this frame. The wide variation of rates across IHEs in the present study emphasizes the significance of this caveat. Another caveat has to do with definition. Sexual assault, an incredibly loaded term, can mean a lot of different things in different contexts. In this survey, it means non-consensual sexual contact involving either sexual penetration or sexual touching. Sexual touching includes kissing as well as rubbing against the other in a sexual way, even if the touching is over the clothes. I'll say more about this wording later on. What about non-consensual? This means either that the act was physically forced or that the person's consent could not be obtained because they were passed out, asleep, or incapacitated due to drugs or alcohol. But no definition of incapacitated is given, so it is not clear how drunk, to use the example of alcohol, you have to be to meet this particular condition. Interpretations could range pretty widely. Well, this is good. I'm glad to see this.
Yeah.
I'm glad to see this stuff coming out. I'm glad to see this on, the Huffington Post. Yes.
If it includes all those different things, certainly 1 in 4 women have been touched in a way that they did not want.
Yeah.
Or a guy kissed them, you know what I mean? Thinking that they were having a moment, maybe.
Yeah.
A guy kissed her. A girl's like, wait, no, that's not what was going on. Whatever.
Yeah.
That could be a form of sexual assault, even though on the male part he wasn't necessarily thinking that he was doing something wrong. Yeah. You know what I mean? And I'm sure there are men that will try things that, they'll keep going once they realize the girl doesn't want to. But in other cases, it could just be a guy thinking that he was, reading certain signals, and the girl decided, no, that's not the signals, that's not what was going on.
Well, and that's where, this is so what we're talking about is, fundamentally the difference in standards. We grew up in a no means no standard, right? We were taught no means no. Right? So all a girl has to do is say no, or kind of resist,
or don't do that, please.
Stop, or just stop, or whatever. No means no.
Yeah,
that's the way we were raised, right? I think it's a reasonable standard, and I also think that it's a standard that has room for kind of you have room to kind of get it's a good standard because all you have to do is that's the minimum. It's okay, no means no, right? And then as people get to know each other better, they kind of develop when is there room to be playful,
right?
And push the boundaries and but to start with, it's just no means no, and that's how you navigate that situation. It's very cut and dry. The affirmative consent thing is the kind of the new wave of feminism, their kind of way of saying, well, no means no isn't good enough because sometimes women freeze.
Well, and that's true.
It's true.
Sometimes
women freeze.
I have frozen, but there is a certain level of responsibility that we must take as women, and we need to teach women to not freeze. We need to teach women to be assertive. And if a guy starts to do something to you that you're not liking, you need to tell him no. You need to even if you can't say so, put a hand, some kind of motion to let the person know that what they're doing is not wanted. But that's a whole nother thing. I think that the affirmative consent, it's pretty unromantic, it's like, if a guy is constantly asking you, oh, well, first, can I kiss you? Yes. Can I do this? Yes. I'm sorry, but that's just, how, it's so ridiculous. I'm sorry, but even really any of the times that a guy asked if he could kiss me, I said no. And I'm sure it probably was just because I had no feelings for the guy, but it kind of begs the question, is it just, it's weird, right? That's not how romance and intimacy work.
Yeah.
How it works is you're staring into each other's eyes, or you're cuddling, or
it's
it
subjective.
It happens naturally,
Yeah.
But so I don't know, the whole affirmative consent thing, it's so sterile, sanitary. It's it just doesn't seem like it.
There's no room for humanity in it. You know what I mean? And that's the real, that's the real shame of it. You know what I mean? It's human beings need room to be messy. And like we were talking about yesterday, the idea that we need to be better at being at forgiveness.
Yeah.
Right? Like, Kevin Hart getting pulled from the Oscars over a 10-year-old joke,
Yeah.
It's like we need room for human beings to be human.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And this kind of weird leftist authoritarianism that doesn't allow. I mean, like, and I'm not saying there's no right-wing authoritarians who don't, who dehumanize people. It's like obviously.
Yeah.
Like obviously.
Mm-hmm.
Right? That's the problem. It's so obvious, right, that there are. The problem is that on the left, it's like they're literally dehumanizing people, and they're sanitizing humanity out of sexual situations.
Yeah.
And it's like it used to be that the left was free and vigorous and kind of full of joy and
creativity
and art and like fun.
Yeah.
It was juicy.
Mm-hmm.
There was something like, and it's not juicy anymore. You know what I mean?
Yeah. The other thing is
angry.
We're creating. I worry that we are with this whole affirmative consent thing. I'm not saying that nothing needs to be done, because guys also need to know. Like, we need to try to learn how to interact sexually in a healthy manner.
Mm-hmm.
But I worry that it's creating a generation of young men that are scared of the opposite sex. Scared of the opposite sex in general. Like
this feeds into what Peterson's talked about a lot, and a lot of other people. And I don't want to say lump Peterson in with men's rights activists, but men's rights activists have said the same thing, and I see some validity to it. This idea that, at least in colleges and universities, and in kind of the upper echelons of the cultural elite, masculinity is a 4-letter word. It's like masculinity is anything that is traditionally masculine is off limits for men. It's perfectly fine for women to do those things, but it's off limits for men, right? So the vilification of masculine men feeds right into that, right? So it's not just that men. I mean, that's just one front. That's just one front on that whole war on masculinity in a way, right? Like, men, yes, they're afraid of women now. Like, I don't know whether I can, like, what should I do? Like, I have, like, we're, like, our confidence in dealing with, like, whether or not we should talk to a woman or whatever is completely eroded by culture at large. It's like, don't, yes, you should, but no, not really. Right? And it's like, it's basically like, if you, and again, it comes back to this, completely subjective thing of like, if she finds you attractive, it's okay. Right?
Right.
So,
and that's horrible.
That's really bad. It's a bad standard, but it, it's, I think, I don't know how to articulate it really, but I feel like there is a lot to this idea that kind of floating around on the right, that young men are trying to prove that they're allies, to feminism, and that they're not bad people,
right,
by not being
overly aggressive, assertive, or
not being achievers.
Okay.
Right? They're not being competitive. They're not being go-getters. They're not being motivated. Right? Like, all of these are kind of like traditionally positive masculine qualities. Like, he's a real go-getter. He's he's achievement. He's goal-oriented. This kind of stuff. Right? So I feel like a lot of men are kind of going like, okay, get it. Masculinity's bad. We're gonna stay over here and do girl like something else.
Yeah.
Like, whatever is not masculine.
Right.
Right? And so in an effort to prove that they're not, misogynists,
they're becoming more effeminate.
Yeah, they're becoming more effeminate, but it's not just that they're becoming effeminate. Because here's my take on this, right? Is that, like, the absence of masculinity is not femininity. I don't think that's the case, right? It's not like men who are, like, not masculine are somehow feminine.
Well,
you know what I'm saying? Like, I think that they're basically just unformed, kind of sluggish, sitting or like non-directional, like piles of nervous energy, right? That's not feminine.
You're right.
You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So like, I think that what's happening is that they're being stunted. Really, it's like they're being kind of cut off at the knee. Like young men are being cut off at the knees, right? Because the ideals of masculinity are being torn down everywhere, and so you're going, okay, well that's all bad, I guess. So what are my ideals? You're just kind of like waiting for something to follow.
Right.
I have no idea, right? That's not a good situation to be in either, because then all of a sudden someone comes along and goes like, yeah, screw all this stuff, and political correctness is absolute garbage, which I tend to kind of lean towards, but the fact that you get a bunch of young men who've been cut off at the knees, don't know like what masculinity, like where to go.
Right.
They don't know how to, like, they don't have any like good leaders to follow.
Yeah.
They end up following someone like Trump. Because he's unapologetically masculine and he doesn't give a damn.
Right. They end up maybe potentially going to the opposite extreme.
Right.
Becoming like these resentful, like just, potentially very dangerous.
Yeah, exactly.
Potentially more likely to be rapists.
Yeah.
Because, they're like, well, I don't know what you want me to be, and, like, you keep pushing us down, and, screw you. Like,
right. Here's the thing is when you cut at least the kind of religious, kind of masculinity or whatever, the Christian religious ideals of masculinity, articulated in a free society, with individual rights and, the rights of the woman. I'm not talking about like women as property kind of things. Okay. Not going back that far.
Yeah.
But when you look at something like the kind of Christian ethic of what masculinity should be.
Yeah.
There's at least a discussion of, I mean, you have to talk about it in terms of like culture and art and religion. So you can look at any movie, and if you see somebody raping someone, that's the bad guy.
Right.
Like, period.
Yeah.
We know this.
Yeah.
Right? If you see somebody who's, mistreating a woman, see a guy who's mistreating a woman somehow.
Yeah.
Right? Like, I can just say that, and it covers a whole wide range of things that we in the culture understand. It's like, is he talking badly to her? Does he hit her? Does he, like, is he putting her down somehow? Like, all these kinds of things. If you see that in a movie, that guy's a piece of garbage, and he's probably going to be the bad guy.
Right.
Like, it's a way of
even
signaling.
like, he's with a woman and he's looking, sexually at another woman.
Right.
He's, got a wife or a girlfriend, and he's like, checking out some other chick. Yeah, he's the bad guy.
He's probably the bad guy.
Yeah, most
right?
likely.
And like, so we're gonna find out in the course of the movie that guy's the bad guy, and it's a way to signal and foreshadow that he's the bad guy.
At least one of the bad guys.
Right.
If there's multiple.
So you can. I mean, this is just blatantly obvious.
But women can mistreat men in movies, and it does not mean that they're the bad
no,
the criminal or whatever.
It doesn't.
Yeah.
But so we have cultural norms of masculinity, like what's a bad guy. The problem is, and which is fine. I don't have any, it's like, okay, fine. I don't. In that whole rant, it's not like I'm trying to say like we shouldn't have, guys who are raping a woman be the bad guy in movies. Like, obviously he's the bad guy. Like, and that's fine. That's great. The problem is we've taken all of the masculine archetypes and kind of gone like, yeah, but not just guys. And then so now all we see is movies with women who like beat up dudes, and like women who are badass cops, and women who are, the masculine women, female bodies filling masculine archetypes, and men are sitting here going like, okay, so like what is good about, what should I do?
Yeah.
Then.
Yeah, like,
because like I can't open the door for you, I can't like knock out the bad guy for you, I can't like, I shouldn't like.
And you're telling me you can do all this on your own. You don't need me to help protect you.
And if I do those things, then I'm oppressing you because then, like, you don't need no man.
Right. Then it's so, like, what is his role?
Right. So this is the cultural soup that men are sitting in right now, right? And so, in that context, it's like, since there's no clear ideal, like, oh, that's what a man should be like, I'll go there, right? You know, there's no, then it's kind of like, okay, well, I'm gonna, like, not most men, a lot of men, I shouldn't say even most, but a lot of men, more and more men, are going to kind of hang back and wait and try and find something that looks like it's working for someone. And guess what? Trump comes along. Right? Yeah, and he becomes president of the United States.
Yeah. But he's super misogynist.
He's super misogynist, and that's the problem, right? It's like, with all this cutting down of masculinity everywhere, and like kind of just like, oh yeah, you know, like everywhere you look in our popular culture, it's like masculinity is denigrated.
Yeah.
You know?
But see, I think this is why Peterson is also, like, luckily we have someone like Jordan Peterson that is gaining prominence, and people are looking to him because he is presenting the masculine in a healthy light.
Yeah.
He's saying, hey, look, it's not all bad, you know, and these are the ways you can take responsibility for your life. These are the ways you can get your life in order, you know, and he's presenting a healthy way to live in the world and be in the world. And not just for men, but I mean, he does, I think men need his message. I think women do too. Like, it's been helpful for me as well. But I think because of all this stuff that's been going on and all this stuff that we've been talking about, and how young men, especially men that haven't really formed themselves yet, they especially need this kind of a message, you know? That, hey, like, you can be masculine. It's not a bad thing, you know? Like, take responsibility, get your life in order, you know? And I don't know, you know, women, I think we need to learn how to kind of embody the feminine, the beautiful aspects of the feminine. And yes, we're not, you know, we don't always need protection. Like, maybe back in the day, men were too much like, oh, we need to protect you always, and, you know, you need a chaperone. Like, we've come a long way.
Right.
But I like the idea of being with a masculine man. I like the idea of you being kind of my protector. Like, it's not to say that I can't do things for myself. It's not to say that I couldn't, you know, protect myself if someone was attacking me. But I like the idea of you being my protector. And I like the idea of you being stronger than me and wrapping me in your strong arms, you know, and just kind of you being the more aggressive one and the more assertive one. I like that. There's nothing wrong with that, you know, but it doesn't mean that I'm like something less, you know, whereas I think a lot of women took that to mean that, you know, that somehow because the man is physically stronger, that means he's somehow better.
Right.
It's like, no. And we women, we can do things. We can have businesses. We can, you know, be entrepreneurs, and we can do things in the world, and we don't have to just be mothers, even though, you know, there's nothing, although, there's nothing wrong with that either. But I don't know. It's like somehow.
Well, you said something there that I appreciate. You know, like I like the fact that, you know, you said, you know, I like the fact that you're more assertive and aggressive and this kind of stuff. And then you said, you know, but that doesn't mean that, you know, that women are less, right? That I'm less than anything. Well, I have to say, I like the fact that you're more nurturing and sensitive, right?
Yeah.
I think that doesn't mean that men are less.
Right.
Right? So, like, you take that paradigm and flip it, right? I think that's one of the problems with the modern, you know, this kind of like broad cultural level of feminism and the way that feminism has affected the culture in general. I'm talking about, like, all sorts of different, you know, specific authors and thinkers who are, you know, dedicated feminists. I'm talking about the way that it's affected our culture at large. You've got this idea that somehow, like, it's not just that masculinity is, it's weird. There's like this weird, there's these weird conflicting currents in the culture. One is that masculinity is, you know, bad, or that men are bad for having masculinity somehow, and that women should be more masculine.
Right.
Right.
It's so weird. It's so backwards.
And I think it's totally wrong. And, you know, I don't know I'm sure that there are probably lots of feminists that would agree with this, you know, this idea that there's something special about women, right? And that those are good things. You know what I mean? That like
right.
It's like women don't need to be like more like men,
right?
You know, to be valid,
right?
You know, like there's something good about the fact that you're more sensitive, right? And that you're more nurturing. And so
I tend to be more right brain as well, and I don't know if that's exactly a feminine quality or not, but like I tend to be more on the creative side, and you tend to be more on the rational. But we both have both, and I think everyone has some masculine and some feminine qualities.
Right, for sure.
And some women might naturally have more masculine qualities, and you know, who knows why that is, but I mean, there's nothing wrong with us embodying our normal potential, and like that we're teaching young women that, you know, they should hold off on starting a family, and like, you know, they should work on their career, and that's fine. You know, that's fine.
Yeah.
Like there's, you know, maybe nothing wrong with that. I
don't want to discourage anyone from doing anything.
But I worry though that women are not going to find these young men attractive in any manner if they're not doing anything with their lives, if they're not being aggressive or assertive with their life. They're just working, you know, at a gas station, and there's nothing wrong with that, but you know what I mean. Like, I'm worried that these women aren't going to find men that are even intellectually on the same level as they are, or you know, they're not going to be able to find a man that has discipline, or that has the strength of will and character, that he, you know, feels a responsibility to protect her and her children, if, you know, if he has children with her. Like, I'm sorry, but there's something to be said for a man, a husband or a partner that you're nurturing in a different way. Actually, men are nurturing in a slightly different way. That, you know, the masculine is like to protect women and to protect children, and I worry that that's not going to be a thing anymore, you know, and it's just, there's different dynamics, and it's all changing, and, you know, I don't know if it's all bad, but it feels like it's kind of breaking down, and
you know, it's weird because as technology advances, we're in new circumstances constantly, right? So like protect women and children, right? Well, so when you talk about protecting women and children, we're talking about like, well, first of all, women don't necessarily have to have children.
Right.
We've got the birth control pill, and we've got, you know, like abortions, safe and legal abortion, this kind of stuff. So is it necessarily the case that, you know, that women and children need to be protected, you know, in the same way that it's like, well,
they don't. You know, things are less violent than they've ever been. And there's some badass women out there, and and we've got, you know, we can use weapons to balance out the power dynamic, the strength dynamic, but there's something good about the fact that men have, for all time, had a innate desire and an innate urge to keep women safe. And I worry that it's breaking down partially because women are like, no, we don't need your help. We're strong enough, you know? We don't need you to protect us. We don't need you to do this and that. And it creates kind of an animosity between the sexes.
Well, and okay, so that's interesting, because I think that's a generational, like, kind of a weird generational evolution that's been going on.
Yeah.
So I feel like in a lot of cases, you know, a person's parents may have been in a situation where the father was playing a role, like a more old-fashioned paternal role, who, you know, kind of was, you know, he like he was in control of the finances, and it wasn't because you know, they had talked about it and figured that it was, you know, oh yeah, you do a good job, and that's, you know, and I don't want to or whatever. It was because he was of the mind that women couldn't be responsible with finances or something like this. You know what I mean? Or like, or that it was the man's job to be in control of the money, and that you give his wife as an allowance to do things with. And it was kind of an infantilization, right, of the feminine that it kind of was born of, right. And so women who have grown up with those with that parental framework, I'm sure, you know, it's kind of like, I don't need you to help me with that.
Yeah.
You know, I don't need you to help me with, because if the father is infantilizing the woman, the mother, right, then the kids the women growing up underneath that are going to kind of naturally rebel against that dynamic and be like, no, I don't need your help with that. You know what I mean? I'm an adult, I can do it myself, right? And and
it's true to a certain extent.
So that's true,
I mean,
right?
in the modern world.
There's well, and you know, thankfully so. Thankfully, we live in a society that allows. Thankfully, we live in a society where life is not so hard that we need, you know, kind of gender divisions of labor, you know, for most work. It used to be that we lived in a society where, like, technology was not advanced enough to make working easy enough, right? It's like, people didn't, like, okay, even like road construction. You think about the guy out there on the road today with a jackhammer pounding away, and you think of that as a dude, because a jackhammer is a big piece of equipment, it's like a lot of heavy,
vibrating.
Right? But a woman could do that with a jackhammer, right? Sure.
Yeah.
But it used to be that we built roads with hammers.
Right.
Literally sledgehammers.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Crushing rock.
Yeah.
So it's like, that's different.
Yeah, women would have a harder time, and it's not just because of our smaller frames, our like less bone density, less, you know, upper body strength, but then not to even mention the fact that if a woman was pregnant, there's no way she could do that kind of hard work. She'd have a miscarriage like that. I mean, we need to be mindful when, you know, we have a new life. But yeah, even in general, and most women wouldn't want to do that kind of work.
Right. And so, well, and not just not, you know, like, so we've got a new kind of technological layer to our culture that a lot of the really hard work has been done, and it's created a foundation in which we can build new technologies, machines that allow us to do, you know, it used to be that, you know, in a factory, you know, a man would work in a factory and he'd still be like, you know, lifting incredibly heavy things and, you know, make it like, you know, cranking things and pressing stuff by, like, operating heavy machinery by hand. Right. Now it's mostly hydraulics and electronics, right? So it's like, press the button, big stamp goes, right? And okay, you know, so, okay, sure, great. We're in a situation where, you know, we live in a culture, in a society now, in the Western world especially, where we don't need gender divisions of labor. That's great. Right? It doesn't mean that the gender divisions of kind of meaning and psychological... There's a partnership, I feel like, between men and women. Right? So you mentioned earlier that we all have masculine and feminine traits. And, you know, something I've learned is, you know, studying statistics and stuff is that, well, just looking into things, the difference between men and women is less than you know, the differences between the groups is less than the difference within the group, right? So there are, like, it's like a 60-40 split, right? When you look at the average, something like this. And so it's not like there's plenty of women who are, you know, more masculine than plenty of men, right? That's fine. But what's interesting is that when people get into relationships, like if we get into we've been in a committed relationship for 12 years, almost 12 years. And I've gotten more masculine and you've gotten more feminine.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, why? because we can. What I think what happens, and this is what's interesting to me, is that as individuals, we have to be everything.
Right.
Right. We have to manage our own emotions. We have to manage our finances. We have to manage our making food. We've got to do all the different things.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
But in a committed relationship where we can rely on each other, we've come to rely on each other for various things, and we've kind of naturally gravitated towards our our kind of embodied archetypal expressions, if you want to call it that, right? So I've become more masculine over the years, and you've become more feminine, and I think we're stronger than ever because of it. Like, you're like it's the same reason that it's the same reason that kind of diversity works, and capitalism works. It's like we allow freedom to specialize, basically.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so there's some things that you're just better at than me, and that you do sooner, right? Like, I'll let the dishes sit in the sink for a long time, and it doesn't bother me.
Right.
Right? But it bothers you, so you do them right away,
especially
right?
over the years, I've gotten more into having a clean space, and so it does. It bothers me sooner than it bothers you.
Right. And so you just tackle it.
I tend to do it, yeah.
Right? And you're better with finances. I don't.
Well, I took on the role of managing the finances.
Yeah. I don't know if you're better at it because I haven't really tried to.
Yeah.
I was doing okay. Before we met, I was pretty okay with my finances. Keep money in savings and stuff like this. But, but you are orderly. So when we buy something, you want to, get the receipt and put it in the budget, and you want to know. I'm a little more kind of like, I just won't buy anything. That way I don't have to think about it. I just won't buy anything. And there will always be money there when I need it. You're like, you should probably manage it in a little more sophisticated way.
Yeah.
That's fine. But I think about politics more. I engage with philosophy and these kinds of things more than you do, and I'm more interested in them, I think, and that's okay. But then we sit down and we have these kinds of conversations, and you get to benefit from my interests and proclivities, right? And I get to benefit from yours, and we help each other and we grow together, and I think it's a beautiful thing.
Yeah.
And I should also say that, like you said, we all have a mix of these things, and it may be perfectly. I'm sure it's perfectly functional in relationships where the woman is more masculine than the man, and the man is more feminine. You know what I mean? And we do need to be flexible about our, kind of our acceptance of roles and what it means. Like, the fact that what it means to be a woman or what it means to be a man is fluid, is totally, like, to me, it's completely non-controversial. It's like,
Yeah.
Right?
Sometimes the woman is going to take on the role of bringing in more of the income or even all of the income, and that's not a horrible thing.
Yeah.
In my parents' own relationship, even for them, and they're pretty traditional, but they've gone back and forth, you know what I mean? Over the years, my dad has done quite well, but then there were years where it was a little bit slower because it's a personal business, and my mom took on more of the role. But they've been fluid, and even for being as kind of traditional as they are, they've had to allow themselves to kind of grow and change. And my dad, in some of those years, he took on more of the burden of the house cleaning, and the cooking and taking care of that. And it's like, there's nothing wrong with that. Let's be fluid. Let's not be strict about it in any regard.
Right.
But let's
not denigrate, though.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like. And
let's not denigrate the people who can make it work, where the guy is going to be the breadwinner and the woman stays at home with the kids. That is a big job. Even one child, let alone like 2 or 3. I'm sorry, but, I heard something recently where someone was like, oh, stay-at-home moms are leeches. And I'm sorry, but even just trying to keep our house clean with a dog and you and me, like you and me, like there's two of us and a dog.
Me and the dirty dog.
No, but you know what I mean? Just trying to keep our house clean and run my small from-home business is enough. Like, I can't imagine having another kid, or a kid. That was not a Freudian slip.
That was a Freudian slip. That was a Freudian slip.
No, but anyways, no, you know what I mean. Like, I feel like the dog, that's not what I was saying at all. But the dog, he's constantly shedding. Just trying to keep us fed, our house clean, and keep my business running is enough. If I had a kid or more than one kid, it'd be hard to do all of it.
Yep.
I'd be enough. It's a full-time job. And for anyone to say that a stay-at-home mom is a leech, screw you.
Yeah, right?
That is
Where did we see that? That was, oh my God.
Was it a senator? Or
it was,
or someone...
I haven't been able to, I wasn't able to confirm it. We saw, it was, I think it was a meme on Facebook or something like this, but it was some new Democratic senator was accused of saying that stay-at-home moms were leeches.
And I'm not saying that there aren't some women out there who really kind of are schlubs and are just like, not really even doing the best job taking care of their kids, or, I'm not saying that it isn't occasionally the case that, stay-at-home moms could, just, I don't know, be couch potatoes, but for the most part, that's not what's happening.
Yeah. All right, here it is, actually. This is from the Daily Caller, so it's right-wing, we're not gonna, we don't need updates. I'll look you up if I want to.
And
we should probably wrap up pretty soon here, but let's just see. Kristen Sinema once called stay-at-home moms leeches. Arizona Democratic Senate candidate Kristen Sinema in a 2006 interview. How old is this woman? 2006? Interview characterized stay-at-home moms as leeches who essentially cash checks off their husbands or boyfriends. These women who act like staying at home.
Well, maybe she's changed her tune by now.
Yeah, I'm gonna say
that was long enough ago. Again, we need to.
Again, it's
that thing. It's like
people say things, and
I'm not gonna be inconsistent about this. In 2006,
that was a long time.
2000, ago. Jesus, that's before we met. That's
scroll,
13 years ago.
Scroll down for a second. So the Phoenix New Times dug up the quote in 2012 as a part of a story about her verbal flubbery, stating that it got Sinema in hot water at the time. The Federalist Bree Payton brought it to light again as Sinema seeks promotion to the Senate. So this is again a case of someone using what someone said years ago as evidence that they're somehow a horrible person.
Right.
I don't agree. Like that she said that, but I also think that they're just trying to demoralize her. They're just trying to say that she's like a horrible person.
So she's 42.
And who knows, maybe she didn't have kids at the time. Maybe she does now, and she recognizes how hard it is to try to do both.
Well, here's the thing. She's 42, so she's older than I am. Let me see, 2006? Yeah, she's not that much older than I am. And in 2006, I'm thinking, okay, yeah,
it's like 12 years ago, 13 years ago.
It's 13 years ago. It's longer. This is further back. They're going further back than.
She was in her late 20s, right? Or she was like 30.
42 minus 12.
She was like 29 or 30.
She was 30. Yeah.
So, whatever. So I don't like that she said it. I don't agree with that at all.
I don't agree with that sentiment, but I also don't necessarily believe that, that 12 years later she would, that she
still
probably thinks that. You know what I mean?
Who knows? Some people don't change their tune, but hopefully she's learned.
Yeah, I mean, this is the thing. Like right now, we're just kind of free flowing and engaging with like really, kind of weird topics that are culturally relevant and controversial.
Yeah.
Right? Like there's a war of ideas that's kind of impacting our culture right now. And to engage with these ideas, you kind of have to like grab one set of ideas that seems right to you, and try to articulate them as best you can.
Yeah.
You know, and in doing so, you're gonna be hyperbolic and inflammatory and all this kind of stuff if you're passionate, if you care.
Yeah.
Right? And so, you know, I mean, probably 6-7 years ago, I would say 7 years ago, I was like becoming an ardent libertarian, right? Like almost an anarcho-capitalist, right? Like we don't know, no government, like an anarchist kind of, you know, and I'm sure there are things that I've said that are just stupid. Like that I would look at now and be like, that's stupid.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? That's a stupid thing.
Yeah.
Like that's totally wrong.
We've talked about this.
You know?
Yeah.
And so I don't like it when the outrage mob on the left goes back 10 years and kicks, you know, Kevin Hart off the Oscars. I don't like it when the right wing starts going, oh yeah, this, you know, this chick said, you know, 12 years ago that, you know, stay-at-home moms are leeches. It's like, really, this one soundbite is who she is?
Yeah.
Come on.
Exactly. But that's kind of the world we're living in right now.
Yeah. That's the one thing I think really needs to change. Right? There's like this new kind of permanency.
Yeah.
Because of the internet. We're all connected, right? And there's kind of a permanent record of everything that everyone's doing and talking about and saying. And if you come to public, especially if you come into public life or you're running a company or you're doing something like this, you're almost, it's like you're everything you've ever done is representative of what you are currently. And we need to fix that because it encourages people to pick something and stagnate to it. It encourages kind of a herd mentality in a way. And it's like, okay, you know, who's going to, and part of the reason I think the left-wing social justice mob is so dangerous is because you look at the world and you go, okay, who's the most authoritarian kind of, you know, meanest people that I need to be the most afraid of? You know, okay, I'm not going to say anything that those people disagree with because this stuff's going to be online forever.
Right.
So if I'm going to say something online, I'm just going to make sure that I don't offend the most dangerous people.
Right.
You know, and the meanest people and the people who are most aggressive. You know?
Yeah.
Because I don't want to be in their crosshairs in the future. The chilling effect is bad.
Yeah, it silences people's true opinions and feelings about things because they don't want to get harmed. They don't want to be attacked.
Yeah, and I'm hoping that we can avoid that a little bit. I feel like we tend to just have conversations, and we're vulnerable in our ignorance and our kind of our ability to just kind of like talk it out. You know, express what we're thinking.
Yeah. Yeah, but
hopefully that's valuable at some point in the future, or the people who may or may not be listening now.
Yeah.
So.
All right.
We should probably go. It's been an hour and a half.
You gotta take the dog out.
We definitely have to take the dog out. We've got a lot of work to do. Thanks for hanging out with us, and we'll see you again tomorrow. I do want to get into spiral dynamics at some point because I think it's really another one of those things that's really important to the cultural conversation.
Yeah.
It would really help a lot.
Yeah,
if it
was
more broadly known, so I'd like to talk about it. Let's try and talk about it tomorrow.
Okay.
All right?
Bye.
Thanks, everyone. Have a good one.